maybe he did. Okay, I clearly I missed something. I must have fell asleep. Hold on. There's a part of this that was getting me. So let me turn this down a tad bit. All right. Check it out. So it actually does say DLSS 4.0 full RT on. I didn't remember him mentioning DLSS at all. So that's why I was just trying to go back over it just to make sure I didn't forget or miss it or something. But yeah, that's why it threw me off, because I saw this out the corner of my eyes, but I didn't know that he actually said DLSS. Like throughout this entire presentation, he never mentioned DLSS 4.0, but it does show that DLSS 4.0 is on this RTX card. Now, he doesn't say specifically whether or not it's associated with the 5090, 5080, and 5070, but you can probably draw that conclusion just from looking at this one picture. So that definitely helps as far as where he was talking about when he said the 5090 is 2 times faster than the 4090, and the 4090 is on par with the 5070, which was a little odd. I was like, okay, like, come on now. Generally, the 4090 is going to be equivalent to the 80 series of the following tier, but for it to be equivalent to a 5070, then there must be some type of tracing on, some type of DLSS on that is more superior to that of the previous model. All right, so first off, while he's showing that off, it's a 2-slot card. So he said that this was the RTX 5090. He did not say that was the 5080. He said that that was the 5090. So the 5090 default Nvidia card is 2-slot, which is really good. Now, whether or not the OEM models, the manufacturer models, like once it gets to like other manufacturers like Asus and so on and so forth, will they also be 2-slot? I seriously doubt it. They're probably going to be 3-slot. But at the same time, I would love to get a 2-slot. I have been craving for a 2-slot 2-slot graphics card since forever. I love 2 slots. Like I had the 1080, the 1080 Ti Mini, and then I had the 3090 2-slotter. And so now I would love, like the 4090 I have is like one of the biggest ones. I have the Gigabyte 4090, and it's like 3.5, 4.5, 5.5 slots. Like, it's a big boy. So the fact that he can actually hold that without breaking his thumb is a pretty good sign that that's a pretty thin card. And plus, you can look at it from the side there. One thing that I would like it to have is USB-C. It would be nice that if you have like a camera or something along those lines, that it can actually also take a USB-C as an input that allows you to hook up your camera directly into it. So take an actual input. That would be really cool. So like have an input and like 4 outputs, because sometimes people don't really use like all ports. So maybe have 1 input and maybe 4 outputs would be great. But you know, it is what it is. I'm not picky. I'm just happy that it's actually a 2-slotter, because you just don't get that these days anymore, especially on the higher tier models. Now, one of the things that he did talk about was the price point. Now, he was talking about how the 4090 was $1,599. This isn't true. I don't know which 4090 you got. I'm joking. So the 4090, when it first came out, it really was $1,599. The problem was it got scalped almost instantly. I ended up getting mine by waiting in line for like 3 hours at Micro Center, and I got mine, which was the Gigabyte version. And the Gigabyte version actually was, I think it was like $17.99 or $16.99. It was somewhere in that area, and it's one of the bigger cards that they had. So 9 times out of 10, if you're looking for the 5090 here because he said it was 2 times faster, please take that with a grain of salt. He's talking about with DLSS 4.0, because he actually showed it on a picture. Even though he didn't say DLSS 4.0, you can clearly see that DLSS 4.0 is a part of this from the picture that we just looked at. It's using DLSS 4.0 and is using that to make that kind of a suggestion. So by saying the RTX 5070 is equivalent to the 4090, obviously that's not going to be entirely true. That is with DLSS 4.0 turned on. So please bear that in mind. Whereas the 4090 performance is only DLSS 3.0. So basically it's doing more frame generation on the newer tier series than it was on the previous tier model. Now, it also, you know, pokes fun at everybody that bought a 4090. He was like, oh yeah, you remember when you bought the 4090? Well, the 5070 is equivalent to a 4090, so sucks to be you. Yeah, so please bear that in mind. I mean, there's no probably. It's a pretty good shot that he's talking about DLSS 4.0, and that's the reason why these two are equivalent. Otherwise, it would not be the case. And so the RTX 5070 he's putting at $549, which is very impressive. And we'll just pause it here because I know the screen wasn't on there for very long. But the 5070 with 1,000 AI teraflops or tops is $549. The 5070 Ti, which is $749, comes with 1,400 AI teraflops or tops. I'm just going to go with tops because that's what it says. And then the RTX 5080 is $989. I'm liking that price for the 5080. And it has 1,800 AI tops, and then the 5090 at 3,400 AI tops for $1,999. So it's $500 or $400 more than what the the 4090 was when it first came out. But please bear in mind, all of these sold out almost immediately, like almost immediately. And so if you want your hands on a 2-slot card, you're gonna have to like get in there on it. You know what I mean? But for a 5080 to be, 5080 is probably where that sweet spot is, because most people, like if they're really kind of going towards the higher end of gaming and they're looking for the 50 series card, that $999 for the 5080 looks absolutely amazing, because you can get 2 of these for the price of one 5090. That is something, because, okay, even when the 4080 came out, so if we look at the 4080, okay, so it was $1199, right? So it was $1199, and then the 4090 was $1599. Okay, well, that's only a $400 price point difference, or a price point difference between them, but the 4090 was far superior in terms of performance than the 4080. But in this case here, we're talking about the 5080 and 5090. I would buy 2 5080s just from what it's telling me here. Now, I get that it's a higher amount of teraflops, which means that if it's running DLSS 4.0, it will be far superior. I get that, but I would rather have 2 5080s. I think that maybe the 5090 price point is a little bit too high. Now, if it had gone to maybe $1699, then I get you. But at $1999, you literally are telling us that one 5090 is equivalent to 2 of these 5080s, and I don't think that's the case. I think that you will be a lot happier with the 5080 simply because the 5090 price point is just unreachable. Now, what's going to happen is that the 5080 is going to get scalped. And so it's going to force you into the 5090, even though you don't want to be there. But yeah, if I had to look at these and say, just from what he's showing and the fact that he's talking about DLSS 4.0, I would say the 5080 would probably be your best bet, because, okay, look at it like this. The 4090, right? If we kind of go back to the 4090, it pretty much gave you everything that you needed, right? It gave you all you needed in 4K, all you needed in 2K, and obviously all you needed at 1080p. So if this guy gives you everything that you need just from talking about the 4090, then the 5080 will do the exact same thing, right? Now, it will do the exact same thing with DLSS 4.0, which means that 9 times out of 10, if you have a 4K 240 hertz monitor or 4K 165, 4K 144, it's going to let you hit that in just about every other game, or just about every game that you play, because you're running DLSS 4.0. Does that make sense? So because the fact that you're already running it, the 5090 is supposed to be more than that, but there isn't any monitor that needs that. You see what I'm saying? So once you hit that 4K 144, you really don't need much more than that. As long as you can get 4K 144, 4K 165 consistently, then there's no need to go higher. So if the 5080 more than likely can give that to you, because the 4090 can almost give that to you. The 4090 can almost hit that now. You know what I mean? It can almost hit that with 80%. I would say 80% of games, it can give you that. And so when you look at it, the 5090 just seems unfeasible for most people, because there's just no point. Okay, so, if you can get 4K 360 frames per second, who cares? You're never gonna get, like, bro, you're never going to need that. So your eyes are not gonna get any further than like 165 hertz. You might be able to tell the difference between a 165 and a 240, but there's just no point to it, right? Because that 4090 just about gave you everything that you needed. So we're only talking on the high end. And even when I'm looking at the high end, I would say a 5080 is kind of where you need to cut it off at, because there's just no point in paying double for that 5090 when you only have 4K 240 to work with, when you only have 4K 165 to work with, when you only have 4K 120, when you only have 4K 144, when you only have that frame rate to work with. And true, years from now, new monitors may come out that give you 4K 360, but I would still say you're not going to notice that difference, right? If you're already sitting at 4K 144 or 4K 165, you're not going to notice a difference from a 240 to a 360 and it's 4K 360 frames per second. Like, you're not going to notice that, bro. Like, you're not a dog. It's not going to do you any good. So I think they may have priced themselves out of the market, but they may be saved because scalpers may save them, because there's literally no point in having that 5090. You'd be better off having that 5080, and if you need another one, buy 2. You know what I mean? But of course you can't SLI anymore, but at the same time, it still makes more sense to have this. And even when he's talking about his comparison, calling the 4090 equivalent to the 5070 because the 4090 has DLSS 3 and the 5070 has DLSS 4, he didn't say that specifically, but it's very obvious from the picture that he was using DLSS 4. It's still not a very good comparison, because as soon as you turn off DLSS, the 4090 will smoke it, right? So I would say the 5080 will kind of be your sweet spot. Basically, I would call the 5080 a cheaper 4090 with DLSS 4.0. That's what I would call it. I would say the 5080 is gonna be your best bet if you're looking for a higher end graphics card, and just throw the 5090 out of the water and just don't even worry about it. So because of that, this isn't a hard conclusion to make, which means that 9 times out of 10, this thing is gonna get scalped to high heaven and you're not gonna see it. So I would say whenever it comes out, whenever it launches, get it first. Go for the 5080 because the 5090's price point just doesn't make sense for what's available on the market. Please take laptops with a grain of salt.
Look at this thing.
It has to do with the power output. So if the power output is reduced, a 4090 may not perform as a 4090. So please bear that in mind. But yeah, that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you guys so much for watching. And if you like this video, go to the like button. If you really like it, go and subscribe. I love you either way. Take care. All the best and bye. I will see you next time. Peace.